A great start to your week. We are closing in on February, National Embroidery Month. So I have one last embroidery tutorial for you to close out National Embroidery Month. Now, of course, we will be bringing you lots of embroidery tutorials all year long, but we really focused on a few techniques this month that are kind of unique and maybe you haven't tried yet. So today we're going to be talking about Trapunto embroidery, which is a super fun technique, and you can use a lot of different thread types and weights, and there's a lot of designs at your disposal that you can choose from various design companies. So we're going to be going over this pillow project today. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to put them in the live chat, and we will address your questions as we move forward. And let me know if you've ever tried Trapunto embroidery and the experiences that you might have encountered while you're learning the technique, and we can kind of chat and work through those together. Before we get started, I'm kind of getting into the St. Patrick's Day spirit. Who's with me? Anybody out there? I mean, I'm actually wearing one of my St. Patrick's Day projects, and this design is from our Feeling Lucky machine embroidery palette. This palette comes with 10 spools of sulky 40-weight rayon thread in all of the great rainbow and green colors that you see here. You also get these great designs with purchase of the palette. So it's kind of like getting the designs for free when you purchase the palette like this to get all of these great threads. So the sweatshirt I'm wearing is our Lucky design with the rainbow and the pot of gold. We also have Top of the Morning, Mischief Maker, Leprechaun Wrangler, Lucky Lady, and Team Irish. So if you are getting into the St. Patty's Day spirit, be sure to check that out at sulky.com. We also have all of those designs available for individual purchase, or you can purchase the designs as a collection. But like I said, if you grab up that thread palette, it's kind of like getting the designs for free, and you get all of those threads. You don't have to go searching for those great colors that you need to stitch out all of your designs. So, all right, more St. Patty's fun to come, I'm sure of it. But let's get started talking about Trapunto embroidery. Oh, I almost forgot to mention, one lucky viewer who is watching right now, commenting, sharing out the live stream, giving me those great emojis, somehow interacting with the post today. That means you are eligible to win the Feelin' Lucky machine embroidery collection. I think that deserves a round of applause. That's right. On every So What episode, we give away a little freebie to one lucky person who is watching and commenting and all those good things. So you could win the Feeling Lucky machine embroidery collection, which is valued at $34.99. All right. Now that that business is out of the way, let's talk about Trapunto. So if you've never heard this term before, Trapunto is an embroidery technique where there are open areas of the design that are meant for you to place batting underneath so that those open areas puff up and give you a really cool surface, dimension, texture, and it's a great quilting technique. As we move forward into March, we will be in National Quilting Month. So I'm actually working on a bunch of quilting tutorials, quick and easy, and then we're going to go into some more advanced techniques as March rolls along. But, I mentioned I was in the St. Patty's spirit, so I've got some quick block tutorials, some basic blocks you can learn if you, have never quilted before, or maybe you're a veteran quilter, but you just need some ideas. We're going to be taking some basic blocks and arranging them different ways to create some cute looks. So I'm working on this one. This is at my machine right now. And I'm going to be putting a cute little gnome applique in the center of this block, and we'll see where it takes us. All right, so back to Trapunto. What I like about Trapunto is you can use one thread color or a blendables thread spool, and you can create large scale designs that look like they're quilted in the hoop. And let me see if I can bring up this image of a design collection. Now, the design that I used is from Embroidery Library, and they have a lot of Trapunto labeled designs. Here is just one of them, Art Deco Delights. And the one that I used is called, let's see, bear with me a moment. Let's see. There didn't used to be all these designs labeled Trapunto, but since it's become such a popular technique, you can just search Trapunto machine embroidery designs on whatever, your favorite machine embroidery design website is, and you will find a ton. So the one that I used is called Beauty Blooming Magnolia. And it's a design that's part of a collection, just like this Art Deco Delights. And it can make a really beautiful whole cloth quilt, or you can create blocks that are slightly larger than the designs and stitch out a different Trapunto design, piece them all together, and you have a very impressive looking quilt that you did in your embroidery machine. And these little open areas, the white areas in the design that you see, the designs that you see here, all have batting behind them to make those areas puff up and give you that dimension. Then the batting is trimmed away beyond those stitching lines, and the rest of your fabric is much flatter than those portions. Is everyone with me? So it looks very complicated and advanced, but your machine is doing most of the work. All the stitching around those puffed up areas are called knockdown stitches. And there's various types of knockdown stitches. You might see them in like a crosshatch pattern or straight lines that almost look like matchstick quilting lines. And they are meant to knock down the fabric or the batting that's in those areas so that the open areas puff up even more around those stitches. So I've got some close-up photos I can show you of this pillow project as we move forward with it, but that's really the basics of the Trapunto technique. You, of course, don't need an embroidery machine to get that Trapunto effect, but it certainly helps make it much quicker, accurate, and you can achieve these beautiful designs, by having virtually no artistic talent. Like, I could never draw these beautiful Art Deco quilt blocks, but my embroidery machine sure knows how to stitch them out. So really, really cool. And let's say you have like a 3-yard piece of the same colored fabric. I like to use a light colored fabric with a blendables thread because then you can really see that thread work. It really becomes center stage. But you could certainly do a tone-on-tone Trapunto with, let's say, a blue fabric and a little bit darker blue thread, and it will blend in but still have those pops of fabric, creating that 3D, dimensional texture to your quilt or your table runner, or it looks beautiful on placemats as well. You can use smaller Trapunto designs and create a coaster set and just bind it. Super cute. So there's lots of different, projects that lend themselves to these types of designs. I chose to do a pillow because it's super simple and I just showcased the design right in the center of my front pillow square. Just stuffed it with a pillow form, and there you go. I have quick and easy, brand new decor that looks great. All right, so let's get to the pillow tutorial. First of all, you're going to create 2 fabric squares, and this entire tutorial is on the Sulky blog at blog.sulky.com, and I have linked directly to the post and all the products I'm going to be talking about today right in the description of today's post. So if you're not seeing all those links, or you're not seeing the link to the blog post, be sure to hit that little See More button and the whole description will pop out. You'll find all the links to everything that I am talking about. All right, let's see. Okay, so I also wanted to mention that, of course, there are these large scale, square, rectangular, even corner style Trapunto machine embroidery designs. Those really lend themselves to things like pillows, table runners, obviously things with corners, quilts, but you can also find smaller designs where you would, even put them on a garment or a tote bag and kind of raise the surface of that particular area of the design. For example, in one of these floral designs, like the one I'm about to show you, you could choose to only put batting in the center of the flower and then leave it out for the rest of the design. Then the center of the flower is going to pop out. So the amount of batting that you cut away can really be up to you as well. All right, so anyways, we're going to start off with 2 fabric squares. And I believe I used a 16-inch pillow form. Just going to double check that to make sure. And I used an 18-inch pillow form. And so I'm going to start off with 18.5-inch squares. But actually, I'm giving you all totally the wrong directions. I did not start with 2 squares. I started with 1 rectangle. 1 long rectangle that we're then going to fold and overlap along the back of the pillow to create an envelope style closure. Super easy. So I apologize. I led you astray. We're actually going to start off with an 18.5-inch by width of fabric rectangle. And in this case, I used a 44-inch wide piece of fabric, probably has about 42 or 43 inches of usable fabric once you trim off the selvages. So 18.5 inches, inch rectangle by the width of fabric. I apologize for saying squares. I was looking at the square pillow form, which is 18 inches. So we want our pillow case to be a little bit larger, but once we sew it, it's going to be those exact dimensions, 18 inches. And the reason that I do that is because I want my pillow form to fit nice and snugly inside of the case. I don't want any extra fabric around it kind of causing wrinkles or little dog ears, and we'll get to that momentarily as well. All right, so first up, we're going to fold that rectangle in half, and we're going to finger press, or you can use your iron to press along the fold line. This is just going to give us a center point for our embroidery design because, like I said, the raw edges of our rectangle are going to be overlapped along the back side. So the center of this rectangle is going to be the center of our design, providing, of course, you're putting your design in the center. Now we're going to fold our rectangle in half the other direction so that we get a nice center cross mark fold line along the front of our pillow. Now I went over the top of those fold lines, even though I could see those pressed lines pretty good, just to be on the safe side that I was looking at the right lines when I was going to line up my fabric in the hoop. Now, you don't have to do this particular step, or if you'd rather mark with a chalk pencil or a fabric marker of some kind, you can do that in lieu of using your pressed fold lines. Or, of course, if you have a placement method that works for you, that you like to use for centering your embroidery designs in the hoop, then by all means, use that placement line. All right, so now we're going to take an 18-inch square of batting, and we're going to apply it to the wrong side of our fabric along the center. So you're going to use those center fold lines or what have you to align your piece of batting. And this is really going to act as the entire pillow front. Even though we're going to trim away that batting when we're done, cutting an 18-inch square piece gives us room to groove and shows us the entire front pillow dimensions. All right, so if you're using a much smaller embroidery design, then you could get away with using a smaller piece of batting. You want to really make sure that you know, of course, the size of design you're using, and you want to have your batting a little bit larger than the outer areas of your design so that you have room to trim it up and just, again, room for error. All right, so I am using Sulky KK2000, our trusty temporary spray adhesive, to make sure that my batting adheres to the fabric and is not going to go anywhere during the stitch out. Now, this next part is, I suppose, debatable. I like to use a layer of Sulky Soft and Sheer Stabilizer behind the batting. Some people don't use stabilizer at all when doing Trapunto embroidery because they feel like the batting stabilizes the fabric enough during the stitch out. I am not one of those people. I like to use that extra thin layer of cutaway stabilizer behind my design. It also protects that layer of batting during the stitch out. So when your hoop is moving around, you don't have any snags of the batting or, your batting isn't going to shift. I like to sandwich my batting in between the fabric and the soft and sheer stabilizer. So again, I cut the soft and sheer the same dimensions as the batting, and I use some KK2000 to stick the soft and sheer to the batting. Now, for hooping, I love using a magnetic hoop when I'm hooping thicker items like a quilt sandwich in this case, because we've got our batting sandwiched between two layers. I also love magnetic hoops for quilting in the hoop, larger scale designs, and, hooping the unhoopables, right? So if you have not tried a magnetic hoop yet, we have them available at sulky.com now. Let me know if you have one and how much you love it, because I really think these are absolute game changers in the world of machine embroidery. I mean, I've been embroidering probably about 15 or 16 years now, and I just started using a magnetic hoop this year, and I never want to use my standard ones because they're so simple to use, and they don't cause any or very little, if any at all, wrinkling around the hoop where you've hooped your fabric. So at any rate, two really strong magnets are your outer hoop and your inner hoop, but it's not really your inner hoop when you're using a magnetic hoop because they match each other. One doesn't fit inside the other like a standard hoop. All right, I digress. So I'm using a magnetic hoop, but you could certainly use a standard hoop. You want to make sure that your batting isn't too thick to fit in your hoop. If it is, you're going to have to use hoopless embroidery techniques where you will hoop another layer of stabilizer. It can be another layer of soft and sheer. Spray it with KK2000, and then you will place your quilt sandwich over the top of that stabilizer once you have it in the hoop. And then I highly suggest you do a baste around the hoop function so that all of your layers are stuck to that hooped stabilizer before your stitch out starts. But if you have a magnetic hoop, you can go ahead and hoop everything. Make sure that your fold line, cross marks, or whatever placement tool you are using is lined up with your hoop. Then I like to just double check my placement. And again, you can use a variety of techniques, whatever you like to do to check your placement. I like to put my hoop in the center position and check my needle position against that cross mark. I can see if my needle is going to sink right in that intersection, and then I know my design is going to be centered. Now, it's another thing if your fabric is not quite straight in the hoop, then you might have a problem where your Trapunto quilt square, if that's the type of design you're using like the one I did, it could be, tilted one way or the other. If that happens for you, or if you're nervous about that happening for you, go ahead and cut your fabric rectangle a little bit larger. Now, we are using a woven fabric, so if you have to recut your piece to center your embroidery design, it might be slightly on the bias after you cut it out, which could cause a little bit of stretching either way, from corner to corner. So you really don't want to have to do that, but it is an option to save your stitch out. If it's slightly askew, you can trim up your fabric square and, no one will be the wiser. Okay, so I like to go to my center or my remove hoop position. Yours might be called something differently depending on your machine, brand, make, and model. But that's how I checked out my machine, or my design placement rather. Now you can also, if you see right below my finger in this picture, you will see a circle that has 4 arrows on it. I also like to use this as a placement tool because I can check all 4 corners of my embroidery placement where my design's going to stitch to make sure that my square is straight up and down. Now this is much more important when you're working with a design like this that is a perfect square. So I then, after centering my needle position, making sure that it's sinking down in the center of my cross marks, then I can go and choose that little icon with the 4 arrows going in each direction, and I can check my design placement again. Now, I would probably check my design placement at least 4 times before stitching out a design like this. I mean, you've heard, of course, measure twice, cut once. I check my design placement 4, 5, 6 different ways, any way I can, to make sure that it's going to stitch out, perfect, especially if I've pre-cut my fabric pieces. All right. See how I'm sinking the needle down? It's really hard to see my cross mark, even though I outlined it in that yellow chalk because I have this nice off-white fabric color. But at any rate, I just sink my needle down in the fabric, and then once it matches that center point, I will put my needle back up, and then I can begin the stitch out once I'm, confident with the placement. Now you want to be sure to use, most likely, an embroidery needle, especially for a pillow fabric. A nice, quilting cotton fabric. It's a little bit lighter weight, something like this. Even a lighter weight canvas, you can get away with an embroidery needle. If you use an outdoor fabric, maybe you want to make some pretty springy outdoor cushions or, pillows for an outdoor, lounge chair, something like this. You'll want to use probably a top stitch needle. But for this, I used an embroidery needle, and I'm going to be using the 30 weight cotton blendables. Look how pretty these colors are. So great for springtime. So for 30 weight cotton thread, I want to use a 90-14 size needle. Okay. If you're going to be using a 40 weight rayon thread, you probably want to use an 80-12 needle, or you can also use a 90-14 depending on your fabric. All right. But since we're going through a lot of layers here during the stitch out, that 90-14 needle won't create too large of a hole when you're doing your embroidery. All right. So a 90-14 and 30 weight cotton blendables thread. If you've never used the blendables thread, this is a really unique thread that is unique and exclusive to Sulky. It is randomly dyed every 2.5 to 5 inches across the thread length. So you get a random color pattern in your embroidery design. If, let's say you're doing all those knockdown stitches and they're going back and forth along a particular area of the design. Well, you don't want the same color pattern going back and forth all those knockdown stitches. So the blendables thread really ensures that you have a different color pattern, and it just looks so beautiful when it's complete. You'll see some close-up pictures momentarily here. So here's what my design looks like when I have it on my machine. You can see I had to choose a 260 by 200 hoop. So if you want to do a very large scale design like this, make sure that your hoop is supported, that the design that you've chosen is going to work in the hoops that you have on hand. If not, look to upgrading and grab up some larger hoops, and particularly a magnetic hoop is my recommendation. If you're going to add on hoops to your machine, you might as well get them in the magnetic style for those larger sizes when you upgrade. You will thank me in the end, trust me. All right, so that's what my design looks like on screen, and I'm going to go ahead and just start stitching it out. So here's a really great image of those knockdown stitches. You can see I've got some horizontal lines and some vertical lines, and those really tap down the batting in those areas so that the other open areas just pop off of the surface. Can you see that really good? Really cool effect, and you didn't have to do anything but layer a piece of batting behind your fabric. All right, so it also shows off that the blendables thread really, really great. So here's my finished design in the hoop. You can see all those knockdown stitches and then just a few running stitch designs, or straight stitch portions rather. So a very simple design. It doesn't have a huge thread or stitch, what am I trying to say? Doesn't have a huge amount of stitches. And you stitch it out all in one thread spool, but look at all the cool colors that you get from the blendables thread. So then we're going to go ahead and remove our quilt sandwich from the hoop, and I just give it a little press beyond the design, just in case I had any wrinkling from the hooping or wrinkling just, along the rest of the rectangle during the embroidery process. Want to make sure everything is nice and flat. So you could certainly leave that piece of batting behind the entire pillow front. Remember, we cut it to the pillow dimensions. So that batting is 18 inches square. But if you really want the trapunto effect just for that center design and not the rest of the, you don't want the rest of the pillow to have that cushy layer to it, you're going to trim away the batting just beyond the design perimeter. And here is where you can choose to trim away more areas of the design if you want. Let's say you want just that center circle of the flower and then maybe the outer leaves to pop out. You would trim away the batting inside of those center leaves, and then those would be much flatter than the rest that pop out. So here is where you can kind of take some design liberties with the amount of trapunto that you want within that particular design. I made it super simple and just trimmed away the batting beyond that outer square perimeter line of stitching. So here's what it looks like from the wrong side. We've got our batting just beyond that design, and then the rest of our fabric is nice and flat. You could certainly also do a pillow that's maybe only 14 inches square, and then you'd have less border fabric around your design, and it would be really more about that center design. I wanted lots of border fabric so you all could really see the effect that the trapunto has on this particular pillow. And then here is what the right side looks like. So pretty. All right. So now we're going to construct our pillow. And first we're going to deal with those raw edges, those edges that are going to overlap to create our envelope style pillowcase. I love doing a pillow like this because it's so easy to remove your pillow form and launder the pillowcase if you need to. So what I found super handy for hemming those short edges of the pillow was a Clover hot ruler. Has anybody used this Clover hot ruler? Because it deserves a round of applause. This is another kind of game changer product that I stumbled upon, and we have them at sulky.com. It is a ruler that is, it feels kind of like a heavyweight felt, and it has that kind of stiffness to it, but it has all of your great measuring lines printed onto it, and you can iron over the top of it. So it's nice and thin in that you can fold your fabric edge over the top and measure your hemline and give it so much heat and steam to set those tiny little fold lines. And it's nice and accurate, and then you simply just remove the ruler, and you can double fold, you can fold at 1/8 of an inch increments, and you get a nice straight, fold line. Because a lot of the times when we try to do these small, 1/2 inch double fold hems and things like that, it's really hard to get that straight edge, right? So this was a game changer for this particular pillow. I double fold my fabric according to the lines on the hot ruler. Here you can see this is the second fold. So the first one I fold and press, then I move my ruler down a bit, do my second fold line and press. And now I have my hemmed edges of the pillow. So I use that same 30 weight blendables thread for top stitching those fold lines so that this thread would kind of mimic the thread I used in the embroidery. But you could certainly use like a 50 weight cotton thread that matches the fabric for your top stitching and then for your pillow construction, of course. So that is entirely up to you. I just wanted that little bit of decorative thread pop, even though it's the back side of the pillow. So you're simply going to stitch along those fold lines so that you have no raw edges along the short edges. And then we're going to do some really careful measuring because we want to make sure that our design is perfectly centered on the pillow front. So you're going to fold over one edge of your rectangle. Make sure to measure so that your design is centered, and then fold over the opposite short edge so that it overlaps the previous fold by about 3 inches, give or take. You want the whole pillow to measure about 18 inches, all right? Because that's the size of our pillow insert, of course. So if it's a little bit more or less 3-inch overlap, that's okay. Don't stress yourself out about it. The most important thing is that our design is centered along the front of the pillow once you turn it over. So making sure that our wrong side is facing out, right? So that we turn this right side out. You're going to have that overlap, and then you're going to pin along the lower edge and the upper edge, because that is what we're going to sew to construct our pillow. All right, now, if you want to, you can taper the corners of your pillow as well. I like to do this so that I don't get those dog ear points when you finish your pillow and your corners kind of flap and they're kind of sad on your pillow. All you need to do is taper your corner stitching ever so slightly, and it's going to look like, your pillow is not straight anymore. But once you turn it right side out, the magic happens, and all of a sudden your pillowcase looks perfectly square. So I measure in from the edge, about a 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch. All the dimensions for the tapering of the corners are in the blog post. And you're going to measure and kind of draw your tapered points. Oh, I don't have an image of that, I guess. Let me just double check here. Again, all the instructions for the tapering are on the blog post. So let's see. All right. So at each corner, we're going to measure up 2 inches from the corner point. Let me go back to that previous image. So up along that 4-inch line that you'll see on that ruler, you're going to measure about 2 inches along that edge and mark. Then you're going to measure a 1/4 inch to the left of the stitching line. That's what I'm measuring here in this image. Then you're simply going to connect those points with a diagonal line. And that's the line you're going to stitch along for each corner. So you have this slightly tapered corner point of your pillow. All right. Then you can choose to either zigzag stitch or serge finish your upper and lower seams if you so desire. I left mine raw, but you know, if you want to zigzag them and your pillow is going to be laundered quite a bit, I would definitely zigzag or serge finish those raw edges. Then we are simply going to turn our pillow right side out. And I have this really nifty turning tool. You can use a point turner, a chopstick, something like that, and just run it along your seam lines and push out your corners a little bit. Then it's simply a matter of inserting our pillow form into our pillowcase. And I gave it a little bit of a press, and you can really get that trapunto effect because you can see the center of the design is almost a different color than the rest of the pillow because it's got that layer of batting and soft and sheer behind it. Now, if I would have used a little bit darker fabric, you wouldn't notice that as much, but since I used this off-white kind of fabric or cream fabric, it's really, really noticeable. So I did that on purpose so you'd be able to really see the difference between those areas in the design and in the pillow. So here it is on my couch. And again, you can choose to use a smaller pillow form, create a smaller pillow covering, but obviously the construction steps for the envelope pillow are totally the same. Just creating that long rectangle and overlapping the short edges so you have an envelope closure. And you can display whatever design you want on the front of this. If you need a St. Patty's design, go for our Feeling Lucky machine embroidery collection, which I just want to reiterate for anybody who joined late. The Feeling Lucky machine embroidery collection is the freebie for one lucky viewer who is watching and commenting and giving me those great emojis today. Stumbling over my words. So excited about St. Patrick's Day, I guess. All right, so at any rate, these designs come in 3 sizes. So you could use that large scale or the largest size of design and center that on your pillow. Or you can try your hand at this trapunto effect because again, it looks kind of complicated. It looks a little advanced, but all you're doing is layering that piece of batting underneath. And you'll want to look for a design that has those open areas. Or you can just simply search for designs that have trapunto in the name. They are specifically digitized for that layer of batting underneath. So much, much simpler than maybe you would have thought previously. And you can also use trapunto designs to quilt your finished projects. You can use that as the center of a block and then add some pretty piecing around it. And you've made yourself a very simplified quilt that looks very, very impressive. All right. Before I let you all go today, I want to make sure you're all aware of our next free webcast. This is happening in a couple weeks, March 14th. It is a Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time with Sheila Ryan of Designs by Baby Moon. Have you all heard of Designs by Baby Moon? Because she is really a freestanding lace expert. And we're actually going to use freestanding lace techniques to build these in the hoop tea light covers. They look like little Easter eggs, but they actually go over the top of a little battery operated tea light. So you turn on your little tea light and you can hang them like little lanterns and they glow. oh my gosh, so cute. Or you can simply make them and put them on a little centerpiece in the middle of your table. They look like Easter eggs or little lanterns. Also, with purchase of the freestanding lace tea lights machine embroidery design or the kit that comes with this webcast, you also get some bonus charm designs. You can use these to create cute little earrings or little ornaments. If you have a little Easter tree, you can hang these on your tree. Super cute. But really, Sheila from Designs by Baby Moon is very well known for making jewelry pieces and really ornate looking freestanding lace earrings. So we're so excited to have her in a couple weeks for this free webcast, and she's going to teach you all about freestanding lace techniques and then how to incorporate sulky felty into these designs so that you can have these cool freestanding lace little egg charms or, hanging lanterns. I couldn't come up with the word. So let me know if you're already registered. I hope that you are. You can find this kit at sulky.com. It's already on sale, and the designs come with purchase of the kit. So you'll get all of these great designs. I think the designs are valued at like $19.99, and then the bonus charms are valued at an additional $14.99. And those come with purchase of the kit. So you'll have everything that you need, all the colors of felty, all of the colors of sulky poly deco thread, and of course your stabilizer and needles that you need to create the project. So I do hope you will join us for that. And yeah, I think that's it for today. So thank you so much for joining me on another So What. I look forward to talking with you all next Tuesday when we dive into National Quilting Month. All right, have a great day, everybody, and I hope you sew something wonderful. Please be sure to share it with us on our Sulky Stitch and Post Facebook group. If you haven't joined yet, it's super easy. Just log into your Facebook account and search for Sulky Stitch and Post, and then just ask to join. And then you can be part of our great community over there, post pictures of your projects, and ask questions to our customer support team right there, right on that Facebook group page. All right, have a wonderful day, everyone, and I'll see you next week for another So What.